The Macbook Pro 2017 Kaby Lake model is an excellent system, although there are a few negatives that you should consider before purchasing the new 2017 model. The Butterfly 2.0 keyboard is a pleasure to type on and unbelievably enjoyable. I was reluctant to change from my 2015 model, but find the typing very tactile and responsive. I would have to say I like typing on the 2017 keyboard more than I did on my 2015 model. Unfortunately, with new technology comes a few negatives to consider. First, the keyboard is much louder than the older 2015 Retina version. Also, the keyboard is very fragile and prone to breaking by nothing more than a speck of dust. Repairs for this problem are extremely expensive if your system is out of warranty or you don't have AppleCare. Be sure to check out my video regarding this problem. I'll put the link in the description below. The Retina display is bright and relatively sharp, but does not compare to the 4K displays of competitors such as Lenovo or Dell. This is not a trivial issue. The Retina display is behind the times in sharpness and DPI, and the difference is very clear when comparing the two side by side. It's important that you see the difference for yourself and decide if it's a deal breaker. The i5 processor of the base model scores extremely well in comparison to the Kaby Lake i7 in the Lenovo Yoga 910. The fine-tuning of macOS and Apple applications make this system very fast for a base model and won't be an issue for everyday use or even processor-intensive work like video editing. The lack of a discrete onboard GPU is not a showstopper in my opinion, as most people who purchase a MacBook Pro are not so concerned about gameplay. Certainly with the 13-inch model you can do some light gameplay, but if you really feel you need a MacBook Pro and you want to play games, consider a 15-inch model with a discrete GPU. Just be ready for some serious sticker shock. Having only two USB Type-C ports is not so constricting as one would think, and having a low-cost dongle is quick and easy to plug in and work with. Don't be intimidated by the lack of ports on this or the MacBook 12-inch, which only has one USB-C port. Many reviewers have talked about build quality, and there is no doubt that this laptop continues that tradition. The one exception is the keyboard, which can be a serious problem due to dust. I do love how thin and light the 13-inch model is, and what a pleasure it is to use whether on a desk, in my lap, or anywhere else. If you're serious about purchasing this unit, a storage upgrade is mandatory. It's not possible to complete much work on 128 gigabytes of storage for the base model. Consider 256 gigabytes the minimum and upgrade to 512 gigabytes if your budget allows. In my opinion, you would do better with more storage and less processing or memory. The macOS interface continues to be a great OS to work in, if a bit aging. Apple has made evolutionary changes to the GUI, but major changes have not occurred in the past decade, although there have been many updates under the hood, such as the newer APFS, which improves storage of files. There have been some security problems with macOS High Sierra, the latest version of macOS. A recent bug in High Sierra allowed anyone who has access to your system to get a root login. This would allow an attacker to literally do anything on your system. Perhaps the biggest embarrassment of recent mention is that Apple has broken their own security patches, making the root login vulnerability resurface. This reminds me more of Microsoft and Windows 10 and shows sloppiness and lack of attention to important detail work in the OS. Battery life has been good, but not as stellar as advertised for me personally. This is more because of my usage habits and not really an issue with the system itself. I tend to multitask much of the time and don't like to dim the screen to 40%, which in my opinion is way too dark. With heavy use and screen brightness at 80%, I typically get 5 to 6 hours of use. If you're not dependent on the Apple ecosystem or Mac OS, you would do much better with a system such as Lenovo Yoga 920. With 16 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte of storage, a Coffee Lake 4-core i7 processor, and a sharp 4K display, the Yoga 920 is much more future-proof and costs about the same as the base model MacBook Pro. This is not to say the MacBook Pro doesn't have longevity. Today, a MacBook Pro 2011 is still a viable system for everyday use and even light video editing. It's also easily upgradable, unlike the new MacBook Pro 2017. If you do decide to purchase the 2017 model, remember to buy a little more than what you need today in terms of storage, processing, and memory. Resale value of the MacBook Pro always remains high, so consider protecting your system with a hard case and saving the box and all the packing materials that come with it. As much as 4 years after purchase, expect to be able to make back 60 to 70% of your original purchase price. This is unheard of for Windows-based laptops, with the exception of a very few. So what's the bottom line if you're looking to get a MacBook Pro? Well, there are some other alternatives out there, and if you're really not stuck on the Mac and iPhone ecosystem, I would consider looking at other systems. You can get a really good system for about the same amount of money, maybe a little bit more. If you're good at your shopping, maybe a little bit less. So personally, I would say that I would avoid the MacBook Pro for the negative reasons that we talked about. There still are a lot of positives and a lot of good things about it. If you're in the ecosystem and you really like Mac OS, go for it. It is a decent purchase. Watch out for the keyboard. If you have any problems, take it to the Apple Store right away. Consider getting Apple Care to protect your investment. Although it is a little bit more expensive, it might be worth doing if you really have to have that MacBook and you still do have concerns about the keyboard like I do. Thank you again for watching. If you really did enjoy the video, consider liking, subscribing, and my favorite, sharing. If you really like the video, consider becoming a patron on patreon.com/FastGadgets. You can subscribe for as little as $1. It's always appreciated, and you could buy me a cup of coffee, which, as you know, I always enjoy. Thanks again.